Hey guys, Brad here with another quick video. I've got a Joust board set on the bench today. This was set in by a customer of mine, Alan. I've done some work for him in the past. I don't think this board had any major smoking guns issues. He wanted to kind of go through it and, restore it, refresh it, make sure it's solid. This board he had replaced the 4116 DRAM with 4164 RAM and was running one of these little, I'll show you later, like a Bob Roberts adapter for the single voltage RAM in lieu of the 3 voltage RAM. And the RAM on here, I could tell with the part numbering, it starts with a K, came from probably arcade shop. And I've seen this stuff have some issues before where you'll see some pixels that get left behind on the screen and things like that. I'm not exactly sure what the problem is with them. I mean, they test good in RAM testers. It's probably a speed issue. They're just probably on the borderline of being too slow. Um, Typically, I recommend changing these, especially if you're having problems with random reboots and stuff. Once I went through and rebuilt these boards on the bench, I haven't seen any issues. So I'm going to leave it up to the customer whether I do have some NOS RAM old school stuff that's pretty fast. If he wants to get some of that from me, I can provide it. So I'm going to switch over to the bench cam. We'll go over what I did, and then we'll do some diagnostics, go through the menu there, and then some gameplay, and we will wrap this up. So let me switch over to the bench cam. And so did send in the power supply with this too, which the power supply on this setup on this set was pretty rough. It had a lot of bodges and things on it. Since the soundboard is first here, so soundboard, kind of my usual deal here. All new electrolytics on it. This was completely stripped down. All new Molex headers with square pins. We've got a new bridge rectifier here. The two 4 amp fuses were pulled, and the contacts on the ends were cleaned up with 3M maroon Scotch Brite pad, and I recrimped these little friction terminals here so they're nice and tight in there. What else we have here? We did have a 10 microfarad cap here that normally is a tantalum, and this one had an electrolytic aluminum one, so I put a tantalum on it. I'm trying to see if there was anything else. Nothing major on this. I did go through and take out the old dried heatsink compound from the audio amplifier and the voltage regulator and replace that, and did a full test on it when I was done. You can see all the tantalums back here. This orange one or yellow one here. There's one back here for decoupling. Another one here I changed. So I think there's about 8 capacitors on here that I swapped, plus the connectors and the bridge rectifier. And now back here on the linear power supply, um, these things get stripped all the way down to, a few discrete components are left on the board. All new Molex headers with square pins, both a 15 pin, a 7 and a 6. All the electrolytics are new. I was actually able to source my own 18,000 microfarad capacitor with the axial leads, and pretty much all the capacitors on these boards. I was buying them all from Peter at Arcade Shop, and just, I go through a lot of these. I probably do 100 a year, and the prices have gone up there, and the shipping's, like $25 for shipping and things like that. It just wasn't economically feasible for me to charge what I do on these and pay all the parts prices, the premium prices. I like to try to support the community when I can, but at some point it just becomes where, it's not feasible. So all new bridge rectifiers here on the -5, the +12, and then the big one here, the BR1 on the +5. And I do put this big custom heat sink on it that I do. Same thing with the fuses on the sound. I pull them all out, clean them, make sure they're the right values. If they're not, I replace them. I crimp all of the friction headers. This one had someone had soldered onto this one here, so I replaced that connector. Both the voltage regulators are socketed now. I put a precision 20 turn potentiometer here to adjust the 5 volts. I've got my green LEDs here. These are kind of the flat top ones that are kind of nice. Um, and then on the heat sink here that has the power transistors, the one closest to the harness is for the 5 volts, and that's a 2N6057. And then the back one is for the 12 volt regulated, and that's a 2N3055. And I do replace the sill pads, or the isolators underneath here. These sill pads are really good. They're thermally very conductive and electrically very non-conductive, which is what you want. So those are new. This has a harness was hacked up. I did replace this yellow wire in here. They had somebody had peeled the insulation and soldered on another wire. I do put in a new Molex connector, and I use the Trifercon pins. And you can see the third pin here. I have what they call a polarizing key you plug in to prevent that from plugging into the wrong spot, because we cut the pin here, so you really can't plug it in backwards or anything. And so that's the power supply. And then again, I do return all the old parts. So here's all the old parts from all the boards and power supply and ribbon cables and junk in there. The customer did send in a couple spare 4164 RAM, which I didn't need. And these are actually TI, Texas Instruments parts. So these probably are better than the ones that are on the board. This was the adapter that was used. I do a mod where I don't use these adapters anymore. I can kind of go over that. This is, and the problem with these is if you run 4164, they're okay, but if you run 256, they're not good at all because the pin one on those ICs, which was originally the -5, when you get rid of that 5 volt, these adapters, both of these just leave that 5 volt floating. And on the 41256, that's actually address 8. So if you leave that floating, it'll toggle and give you all kinds of problems. So uh, I would not recommend either one of these adapters on games because if people replace those 4164s with 41256, they're going to have problems. Here's the ROM board. Pulled all the socketed chips off, both the blitters here, the special chips, all the EPROMs, clean, straighten the legs. New ribbon cable that I built up in house. Reproduction labels on both of the blitters. We've got all new Molex headers in all 3 positions with the square pins. New Nichicon electrolytic filter caps. This board was pretty dirty, so I did remove the labels and completely stripped it down and washed it in simple green. And of course, when I reapply the labels, they're much straighter and cleaner. This board, I believe, does have matching serial numbers. They ended in 57. Here's one 57 on the MPU. We've got a 57 on the I/O. Looks like the soundboard and the power supply all match. So maybe that plate came from one game and this came from another, but those all match on that plate and the ones here all match. So that's kind of nice. I/O board, new 10-pin Molex headers here with the square pins, new filter cap, new reproduction ribbon cable with all 3M parts. Here on the MPU, this is a Rev C board, which is pretty nice. I did replace the battery holder with the CR2450. That seems everybody really likes this mod. The CR2032s, they last a few years, but this has about 3 times capacity. So you're bound to get probably, I don't know, 7 to 10 years, I would guess, out of one of these. And then I do clean up where the old battery holder was pretty nice. A lot of people run a ground from here to here. I do it on the back side, so it's a lot cleaner. I did put in matching blitter here. I swapped out the one that was here because it had a different label. Pulled these and the CPU and clean, straightened the legs. All new Molex headers with square pins. This is the video output. This is the memory interlock, memory protect. There's one pin here that goes up to the coin door. So if you open the coin door, with the coin door closed, it protects the high memory on the CMOS. And then down here we've got Molex header here, new filter caps for the power coming in. This is a 22 microfarad tantalum that I replace that I replaced for the soft start circuit. And then there's, of course, I've mentioned before, the Zener diode. I put in a 4.7. The original was 3.9 volts, and that just really helps protect the CMOS from getting corrupted if someone runs a switching power supply in the future. So let me, I'll show you what I do on that connector to bypass the using one of those RAM adapters real quick here. So I guess I'll just do it on this. I was going to share a computer screen, but if you look here on that power connector, this is the original. So there's 9 pins. Pin 1 is on the right, pin 9 is on the left. The first 4 pins are ground, and actually the 4th one is cut as a key, but so 3 are used. The next one is the 12 volt regulated, and that's only used for the 4116 RAM. The next 2 pins in here are the 5 volt coming in. Typically only one is populated on the harness side. The second pin here is the 12 volt unregulated, and that's typically what's used with the Zener diode to trigger reset. So when you turn the game off, that unregulated voltage drops really quick, and that Zener diode detects it and pulls the CPU into reset. And then the -5 volt comes in, and the only place that's used on the board on the MPU is by the RAM as well. So what these adapters, here's the arcade shop adapter, and the Bob Roberts, I still find quite a few of these around. What they do essentially is they just open the circuit for the +5, so that's not connected to anything. It's just left floating on the board. And then over here where the 12 volt regulator is, it's just jumpered over to the 5 volt. So that pin that was originally 12 volts is now 5, because on the 4164, that's now power on that pin, which is pin 8, I believe. So, so what I do, instead of using an adapter, is, so there's a connector. So again, this was originally the key, it was already cut. So I cut the pin for where the regulated 12 volt comes in and the minus 5 volt. Just cut those off. So you don't have to change anything when you plug in your connector without these pins here. Essentially, the unregulated 12 volts is just passing through. These two were for your 5 volts originally, they still are. And then these three are your ground. So that's all that'll be coming into the board. On the back side of that connector, so again, I don't have to cut any traces or do any modifications. What I do, so again, this is looking at it backwards now. So this is pin 1 over here. So you've got the 4 grounds. These two were originally the 5 volts. I jumper that back over to where the 12 volt was, and so now I'm sending 5 volts out on the traces that were carrying the 12 volt regulated. This is the unregulated. We don't do anything with that. And then where the minus 5 volt was, I jumper that over to 5 volts. So if you run the 256, that becomes address line 8, which is pin 1, and it'll be nice and stable now at 5 volts. If you leave that floating, it's going to be a mess. You're going to have problems with RAM. So all of this, these two little jumpers here, you can see I've got in blue, can be removed. If someone wants to revert back to 4116, all you have to do is replace this Molex connector and remove those jumpers. Nothing's damaged on the board. Everything's reversible. You're not cutting or bypassing or bodging anything up. So anyway, that's what I do on them. So you don't need the adapter anymore. All right. Again, on my bench, I have a little remote control, and I'm going to power the game up. There's our little carpet rug pattern here, which is a RAM test. All systems go. And you can see it goes right into a track. If you notice on here, too, the number 1 score there, Lon, that's Lonnie McDonald. He's the Joust master. And again, I was able to get a copy of a board where Lonnie had played it and put that high score in, and he gave me permission to put that on other folks' boards. So since this board, the CMOS RAM was cleared on it, anyway, I tend to load these and send them out. If someone wants to reset it, it's very easy to do. But this way, if they want to keep it, they can. A lot of folks out there. Lonnie played a lot of boards and a lot of games, so it's possible that he maybe played this one and just the battery went dead and they lost the score. So let's drop into diagnostics. So all RAM's good, all ROM, no RAM errors. This is testing CMOS, no errors. Sound will loop through the 6 of these. And then it'll just loop back there. Next, we come into the switch test. So again, with the little PlayStation controller here, move left, move right. There's a flap. I think I have move right 2, move left 2. I'm not sure what other ones. We've got player 1 start, and obviously coin, and then I do have the ones that go into the ROM board for the 3 diagnostic switch, and then advance, and then we'll do some color RAM test. There's 3 intensities of red here, so you'll see them change, and then you get 3 intensities of green, and then 2 intensities of blue. Again, they had 8, so they picked 3 for red, 3 for green, and 2 for blue. I'm sure they would have preferred to have 3 for each, but after that, we go into grid lines here where you would set convergence with the monitor. We get solid red, green, blue, and then color bars. And then we go into the bookkeeping data. And then this is where you have your settings or your game adjustments. You can set your track message. This is where you could reset the, you could restore the high score table, the bookkeeping data, restore the factory settings, everything through here. You can set a track message, Joe's Arcade or whatever, Alan's Arcade in this case. And then after that, we go back into a track mode. So let me coin it up here and we'll do a little gameplay. As I mentioned in other videos, I'm much better at fixing these boards than I am at playing them. So, disclaimer there. Oh, got me. So anyway, you can see she's playing just fine. I'll go ahead and reset it here. So I might do a separate video on that whole 4116 conversion to 4164 and 256. It's a real issue. I think people are out there that have bought the 256 RAM from an online arcade shop, and they bought the adapter, and really that adapter, neither one of those adapters is compatible at all with that RAM. So I think I'll do like a public service announcement and go through how it's supposed to work, what it does, and maybe show my way here, which I think is a preferred way. It's not as easy as a plug-in, but to be honest, you could easily modify the little arcade shop adapter here. There's a couple things that are wrong with this, to be honest with you. Where they do the 5 volts, they jump in one pin. If you looked on the board, two connections were originally for the 5 volts. They're just bringing the 5 volts into one and jumping it over to the 12 volts. So I would bridge all 3 of those for the 5, and then I would bridge the 5 over to that -5. And you could really pull those address lines that are used. You could pull to ground. They don't have to go to 5 volts as long as they're not floating and changing between 0 and 1, which changes your address essentially in the middle of a So if the program writes a value to an address and then later goes back to retrieve that value, it needs to be at the same address. And if you have one of the address lines that's kind of floating and toggling, anything could happen with the addresses. So you really want to have the ones that aren't being used either pulled low or pulled high and be very stable throughout the gameplay and everything. So with that, we'll wrap this video up. Thanks for watching. Keep an eye out for the next one. I still have the bubbles video I want to do with the FPGA cat box. I developed some new scripts in there to test some additional functionality on the bench, and I'll try to work that one in here in the next few days. So thanks for watching.